My friends, today I'd like to talk to you about the very important topic of finger technique. In case you followed my personal guitar journey over at my main channel, you might have seen videos from around 5 years ago. As you can see, my finger technique wasn't exactly great back then. I could play some very fast and challenging lines already, but when I started filming myself for these videos, I could see that my fingers were moving around quite a lot, especially that nasty pinky finger, and that really stood in the way of developing a super clean guitar technique, so I was touching all the strings all the time. And I also hit a speed barrier with my finger technique, which means I simply couldn't play faster because there was a lot of movement with my left hand. So with today's video I want to show you the 5 most effective exercises that I found of fixing all of these issues, because right now my finger technique looks like this. So as you can see, working on those exercises really paid off for me, and I promise you they will do the exact same thing for you. Here's exercise number 1. So this first exercise is really simple, but it's one of the best ways of getting started with developing more finger control. I barely see people talking about this, and it might actually be one of the most effective exercises of today's video. So when we play chords, like the A major chord I played for you in this exercise, followed by an A flat major chord, our fingers are obviously pressing down on the fretboard simultaneously. So when I'm pressing with all my fingers, I get all the notes of the A major chord to ring out. And when we play guitar solos, we think about each finger individually, so using one finger at a time. And that can result in the fingers flying around quite a bit, because when you start out playing like this, you will really lift every single finger after you played the desired note. Like this, in an over-exaggerated way. So what has really helped me with combining the relaxed fingering approach of chords, where you have the fingers close to the fretboard all the time and working together, while actually playing scales like this with the fingers super close to the neck, is taking a chord shape like A major, and instead of pressing down with all my fingers like this, so that the notes would ring out, I'm just gradually lifting all of my fingers like this. So they are still in place right now, I just lifted them a little bit. When I play the notes now, I get dead notes or harmonics. And now when I play a picking pattern for this chord, I'm always just pressing down with one finger at a time while keeping the others in this position, so very close to the neck. So only pressing down with my index finger, only pressing down with my ring finger, pinky finger and middle finger, while keeping the rest of the fingers in place, just hovering over the strings. And it's much harder than it looks. Give this a try right now, because once you play like this, your fingers actually want to move like that, because you're in that single note mode, similar to playing a guitar scale. So with the first exercise, you want to avoid this at any cost. You want to keep all fingers hovering right above the note that you're about to play, and you're always just pressing down with one finger at a time. This exercise is so great because it's so simple, but I dare you to try it. It's much harder than it looks. And once you do this for different chord shapes every day for a couple of weeks, you will see a huge difference when it comes to your economy of motion, meaning your fingers will stay much closer to the fretboard no matter how fast you're playing. Alright, let's check out the second exercise. Things are getting a bit harder right now, but it's worth it. So as you could see, I was playing an arpeggio shape with this workout. It's a diminished shape. And the reason why I chose this exact shape for the next exercise is because I noticed when I was practicing it that after that second note, where I need my pinky finger on the A string, I don't really need it anymore for the higher notes on the higher string. So often when I was playing this arpeggio, it looked like this. So because I don't need my pinky for the higher section of this arpeggio, it was either bending away or curl like this, or I don't know, pointing in any direction really. Which also sometimes caused my wrist to turn back and forth like this, which isn't great when it comes to string noise, because it's moving around quite a lot. And it was also really hard for me to speed up this particular arpeggio, because I had to move back and forth and change my hand position and do all of those crazy things. So I found that this one is actually a perfect exercise for me when it comes to pinky control. As you could hopefully see when I was playing this exercise for you a bit earlier, my main focus was on keeping the pinky finger right here, so hovering above the note that I played. This is so much harder than it looks, because you're really tempted to move it away because you don't actually need it. But once you return to this note on the way back down, you simply have to press on the fret and then let go again, instead of doing something like this. So in a practical context, you don't have to keep it super stiff, like 1 millimeter above the fretboard. So practicing this way has really allowed me to speed up my arpeggios when it comes to sweep picking. And what's even more important, they're also very clean at this tempo because my fingers aren't flailing around like this. By the way, if you're suffering from less than optimal finger technique, like I would say over 90% of guitar players, I want to help you even more with overcoming this as soon as possible, because once I eliminated bad habits like the flying pinky finger or fingers that aren't exactly curled when they hit the fretboard, which makes playing fast legato lines close to impossible, I got much better results with my fluidity, with my fast licks, with playing longer on stage because my fingers aren't getting that exhausted when I have to play very fast for many hours. The same goes for practicing and tracking guitar at home, of course. And although I'm playing many hours a day, I never ran into issues with tendonitis or any problems with my fingers or my wrist. So if you're serious about your guitar progress, you need really good finger technique in order to achieve your goals. That's why I made a brand new workout and practice package for you on patreon.com/Bernd. This daily finger technique exercise routine consists out of all the concepts that I talk about in this video. So it's just one workout you can click on every day at the start of your practice session. You can play along to the video I recorded for you. You have scrolling tablature at the bottom, and you can also take a close look at my fingers as you're practicing. It's basically like I'm in the room with you, so that you can mirror what you see on screen for the fastest results possible. So it's time to say goodbye to all of your bad finger technique habits starting today. Just click the link in the description or in the first comment down below, patreon.com/Bernd. Download this new finger technique workout, start it today, and see huge results in just 1 week of practicing this. I promise you, this might just change your life when it comes to guitar playing. Now on to the next exercise. Okay, so this exercise is pretty much the only one today that falls into the category of kind of traditional finger exercises. This one doesn't sound that fun, it's clearly an exercise, but out of all the traditional finger exercises, I feel like this one might have helped me the most. We are probably all familiar with the classic spider exercise, where you're just playing 4 notes in a row, the chromatic or semi-chromatic scale, and you keep your fingers pressed down. So you don't want to practice it like this. So immediately lifting your fingers, you want to keep them pressed down until you need the next finger in the next position. That's a great exercise for keeping your fingers close to the neck, but I find it not really that practical, because when you're actually playing guitar solos, you're rarely playing lines like this, where you're just playing 4 fingers up, 4 fingers down. Depending on the style of music that you're playing, you might have your occasional chromatic line in there, but I found it more useful to take this practice approach, so keeping your fingers pressing down on the neck until you need the next finger in the next position, but taking more practical patterns like index finger, ring finger, and really good and hard one, middle finger, pinky finger. So my spider exercise looks something like this. So on the low string I'm playing index finger, ring finger, then on the higher string I'm playing middle finger, but the note is still ringing out, the ring finger, and the pinky is next. Right now all my fingers are pressing down on the neck, then I lift them to start again on the higher strings. So on the A string now, like this. And then of course playing it back down. So that's not the most musical exercise, that doesn't sound great, but it really helps with getting better at odd finger pairings. So if there's a lick where you need to use your middle finger paired with your pinky finger, it will feel much less awkward since you worked on those finger combinations a bit more. So if you're currently working on the spider exercise to keep your fingers closer to the neck, I would recommend giving this one a try. I think it's a bit more practical. Now let's focus on what had the biggest impact on my finger technique working on legato lines. The next one is not just an exercise, it's actually a pretty cool lick. Check it out. Alright, so this is actually a building block or a lick that I use quite frequently when I'm improvising using my legato technique, so hammer-ons and pull-offs. Something you might have seen that's a little bit unusual for a lot of players is that I like to work with hybrid picking for my legato line. So for this one I'm always playing downstroke, middle finger, and so on. That simply sounds a little bit softer compared to downstrokes for everything. And it can also help with navigating the string changes once your legato lines get a little bit more complicated. But what's more important is the fretting hand, of course. Allow me to zoom in. So pretty much as always with my hammer-ons and pull-offs, I make sure to have the thumb in the area around my middle finger, or behind my middle finger, I should say. It It's not really possible to play like this with the thumb over the neck approach like that, because I can't even stretch from the 3rd to the 7th fret when I play like this. So for this playing style, that is absolutely necessary in order to stretch and in order to get some clean hammer-ons and pull-offs. And what's also important right here is that I don't want to anchor with my index finger. That's pretty much one of the worst bad habits. We're all kind of guilty of doing that quite often, so playing that first note and then pressing down with the index finger while we're hammering on with the other fingers. That's pretty bad, because you will never develop some good finger independence, since you're always helping out with your index finger and you're really pressing down very hard. So just try to lift it a little bit after you don't need it anymore, and really let your other fingers do the work. Aside from the technique, this will also really help with feeling the subdivisions, so playing really tight 16th notes in this case, because every note is a new finger, right? And you're not just pressing down with the index finger the entire time. And aside from this really awesome and practical legato lick, I also have an exercise for you that switches between the most important patterns, which is quite tricky. Check this one out. Alright, so this one is quite challenging, but it might just be my favorite one from this video. First of all, you're playing on the D and on the G string. To me, hammer-ons and pull-offs were always easier on the lower strings, so this is a great way to kind of up the challenge a bit compared to the last one. It's also great training for your thumb position again, because once again, you can't play it like this. You have to slide it down and place it behind your middle finger. You also want to sure not to anchor with the index finger, so far so good. But right now you have to switch between a lot of different patterns. With the previous exercise, it was just the same pattern repeating 3 times. But now you're going from the traditional hammer-ons to this really interesting pattern. This one is much harder right away, because once again, you don't really want to anchor with your index finger. And just doing this alone is actually super tricky, because you don't want the higher strings to ring out when you perform that snapping motion for the pull-off. And right here you need your middle finger and your pinky finger. Like I showed you with the 3rd exercise, this finger pairing isn't that easy. So after using your index finger, I really just want you to use your pinky and your middle finger like this. And then here's the seemingly simple pattern that trips up so many players. It's just working with pull-offs. It's quite hard to get them to sound this clean without a fret wrap, so I'm not dampening my strings in any way when I'm playing like this. And I get these nice sounding notes by not just lifting my fingers like this, which is a beginner mistake with legato. I really want to make sure to perform this kind of snapping motion so that I get to have a good sounding next note after the pull-off. And for this exercise, I'm once again working with hybrid picking, so every stroke is followed by a finger pluck. For the second measure, I'm even starting with plucking the string with my middle finger. And my biggest goal with this is that you can't really hear that I'm even changing the strings like a piano player. So I want to be able to combine all of these patterns effortlessly. You shouldn't really hear that I'm struggling or that I'm even switching between fingerings, patterns and strings. And all these different elements like clean pull-offs, getting rid of the string noise, not anchoring with the index finger, having the right thumb position, make this one a super awesome practical finger workout. Alright my friend, it's finally time to take your finger technique to a professional level starting today. Make sure to download the entire finger training workout package I made for you this week with the link in the description or in the first comment down below, patreon.com/Bernd. Over there you can download the full workout, so the play along video, the guitar profile, the PDF tab sheet and the backing tracks with and without my guitar. If you do this workout for just 1 to 2 weeks every single day, you will see a huge difference with your finger technique. You will get your flying pinky finger under control, all of your fingers will stay much closer to the fretboard, and you will finally feel fully in control when you're playing very fast. So start today, the link is down below. I'm waiting for you on Patreon. Have an awesome day. Bye bye.